My name is Samuel Green. I am 72 years old, and in my own family, I'm not a father, not a grandfather, not even a man with stories worth listening to. I'm just the old man with the dog. At my granddaughter's birthday last month, the long dining table was covered in balloons, glittering cake, and little name cards at every seat except mine. They gave me a folding chair by the kitchen door, a paper plate on my lap, plastic fork bending under the cake. I heard my daughter-in-law whisper, "Why do we keep inviting him? He doesn't add anything. He just sits there with that dog." And my son replied, half laughing, "Dad's only real friend is Rusty. Without that mutt, he'd have nobody." Nobody. That word hit harder than the cane I sometimes lean on. Rusty, my old brown dog, sat quietly by my feet, eyes watching me like I was still someone. When the laughter around the table rose, he nudged his nose against my leg, reminding me I wasn't invisible. But to them, I was. A week later, my son showed up at my house with a glossy brochure in his hand. "Dad, this is for your own good," he said. The cover showed smiling nurses, manicured lawns, and the words Evergreen Retirement Home. "You can't keep living like this. You've got nothing here but that dog." Rusty growled low, his ears pinned back. My son waved him off. "You see, even your mutt's aggressive. It's time you moved out." I tried to answer, but my words stuck in my throat. The truth is, I wasn't afraid of being alone. I was afraid of being erased. That night, my granddaughter visited. She pulled out her phone, tilted it toward me and Rusty, and went live. "Look," she giggled to the camera. "Grandpa's having a conversation with his dog. Guess who's winning?" Her friends burst out laughing through the little glowing screen while I sat there, holding Rusty's collar, my face burning hot. Rusty pressed against my leg, eyes steady, as if to say, "I see you even if they don't." But the worst was yet to come. At Sunday dinner, I heard my son whisper to his wife, "We need to hurry this up. Dad's not all there anymore. If we don't move fast, we'll be stuck cleaning up after him and that dog." They thought I didn't hear. They thought I didn't know. But I did. And so did Rusty. He lifted his head, ears twitching as though he understood every word. It was the kind of storm that rattles the windows and shakes the rafters loose. Rain hammered the tin roof of my shed, wind howled through the trees. Rusty wouldn't settle. He paced in circles, whining, then suddenly bolted to the old shed out back. I followed with a lantern, rain soaking through my shirt. Inside, Rusty clawed at the warped wooden floorboards, barking furiously. At first, I thought he'd gone mad. But then I heard the hollow echo. Every scratch of his paw rang different, like the sound was hiding something. I dropped to my knees. With trembling hands, I pried up one rotten plank. There, beneath 40 years of dust and cobwebs, was the corner of a blackened wooden box, sealed in tar paper to keep the water out. My breath caught. Rusty sat back on his haunches, eyes fixed on me, tail thumping slowly as if to say, "This is what I brought you here for." I dragged the box into the lantern light. My fingers fumbled at the rusty latch until it cracked open. Inside, stacks of yellowed letters, edges curled and fragile, a bundle of black and white photographs, a folded map, corners dark with age. I pressed my palm against them. They weren't just papers. They were pieces of a life I had buried long ago, and if my family ever saw them, the way they looked at me would change forever. But for now, it was only me and Rusty sharing the secret. The next morning, when the storm had passed, I laid everything out on the old oak table. Rusty sat beside me, his nose twitching at the scent of time itself. The letters were written in my own hand, decades ago, when I was a young man working for the State Railway Division. Each page carried a story I had never told. Secret land surveys, compensation agreements, even sworn affidavits. And then the photographs. Black and white images of me in a hard hat, standing beside engineers and government men in dark suits. Behind us stretched acres of untouched farmland, the very same land our family still lived on today. At the bottom of the box lay the folded map. It was marked in red ink, property lines, tunnels, and, most importantly, the parcel of land that was never recorded in the county registry. The government had once promised to pay out millions to the rightful owner, but the paperwork vanished. I had kept a copy all these years, hidden, silent. Why? Because I watched my brothers tear each other apart over our father's will. I swore I would never let greed poison my own children. So I buried the truth, locked it under the floorboards, and lived as if it never existed. But now, staring at those papers, I felt a fire I hadn't felt in years. My family thought I was nothing but an old man with a mutt. They had no idea that the land beneath their feet still belonged to me. Rusty rested his head on my knee, his eyes steady as if he understood. The time is coming. They will know. On Sunday, I carried the wooden box into the kitchen, the papers carefully bundled in my arms. Rusty trotted beside me, tail high, as if proud of the treasure we'd found. I set the box on the table where my family was finishing dinner. "I want to show you something," I said. My voice was steady, though my hands trembled. They barely looked up. My son sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Dad, not tonight. We're tired." "I think you should see this," I insisted, opening the box to reveal the faded map and letters. For a moment, silence. Then laughter. My daughter-in-law smirked. "What is this, old grocery lists?" My granddaughter pulled out her phone, tilting it toward me. "Guys, Grandpa thinks he found buried treasure under his shed." She was already live-streaming to her friends. The screen lit up with comments I couldn't read, but their laughter was enough. "Dad," my son said sharply, "you can't keep clinging to scraps of paper. You're losing it. You're embarrassing yourself and us." Rusty growled, low and steady, standing between me and their mocking faces. His hackles rose, teeth bared, as if he could feel my shame. I closed the box slowly. The weight of their laughter pressed heavier than any years on my back. I wanted to shout, to slam my hand on the table, to remind them who built the very house they sat in. But instead, I said nothing. I gathered the box, tucked it under my arm, and walked out, Rusty at my heel, his loyalty the only shield I had left. They thought I was a fool clinging to old memories. What they didn't know was that Rusty had led me to proof strong enough to change everything. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday night. The storm had passed, the air was heavy with summer heat. I was dozing in my chair when the smell hit me, sharp, acrid. Smoke. By the time I stumbled to the hall, flames already licked the curtains. My son's family had been staying the week, and in the chaos I heard a sound that froze my blood. A child's cry. My youngest granddaughter was trapped upstairs. My son shouted into his phone, calling 911, but his hands shook too badly to move. My daughter-in-law screamed, paralyzed, and then Rusty. He bolted up the stairs through the smoke before anyone could stop him. I shouted his name, my voice breaking, but he didn't look back. Seconds stretched into forever. The fire roared, beams cracked, the air thick with choking heat. Then, through the haze, Rusty emerged. His jaws gripped the sleeve of the little girl's pajama top, dragging her down the stairs step by step. She clung to his neck, sobbing, while the flames chased them from behind. When they burst into the living room, I pulled her into my arms. Rusty collapsed at my feet, coughing, his fur singed. For a moment, no one spoke. We just stared at that dog, the same one they'd mocked, the same one they said was nothing. And then I saw it. Where the fire had eaten through the plaster in the wall, a corner of metal gleamed, an old safe hidden behind decades of paint and dust. The very safe I had locked away years ago. Rusty had not only saved a life, he had dragged the truth back into the light. The very next week we sat around the same table, but this time, not for dinner, for papers, for truth. A lawyer placed the charred metal safe on the table. Inside, untouched by fire, were the deeds, contracts, and original government seals I had locked away half a century ago. Proof that the land, the same land my children now lived on, was still mine. proof that the government owed millions in compensation for the railroad easements they had never paid. My son's jaw slackened. My daughter-in-law's face drained of color. This can't be real," she stammered. The lawyer's voice cut like glass. "It is very real, and the rightful owner, the man you mocked, dismissed, and tried to push aside, is sitting right here." I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my voice. I simply rested my hand on Rusty's head. His fur still smelled faintly of smoke, his breathing steady. "All these years," I said quietly, "I stayed silent so you wouldn't destroy each other over money. I thought love would be enough. But when you treated me like nothing, you forgot who gave you everything." My son looked down, shame flushing his face. My granddaughter, the same one who had live-streamed my humiliation, now stared at Rusty with tears welling in her eyes. The room that once rang with their laughter at my expense was silent now, silent except for the steady thump of Rusty's tail against the floor. For the first time in decades, I was no longer invisible. A month later, the house no longer echoed with scorn. It was filled with something else, quiet respect. The lawyers finalized the settlement, millions of dollars, the land restored in my name. But I didn't clutch it with bitterness. I divided it carefully, funds for my children, for my grandchildren's education, for the roof over all their heads. And one more thing. I signed a portion away to create a small foundation for the rescue and care of abandoned animals. I named it Rusty's Trust. When the papers were done, we gathered in the living room. The same living room where once I had been mocked. Now, my grandchildren sat at my feet, listening as I told them stories they had never heard before, about trains, about storms, about choices. And all the while, Rusty lay curled on my lap, chest rising and falling, a living reminder of loyalty. I looked at my family, their eyes softer than I had ever seen, and I said quietly, "Money fades, titles fade, but loyalty is the only treasure worth keeping." Rusty thumped his tail against my knee, as if sealing the words with his own vow. And in that moment, for the first time in years, I was not the old man with the dog. I was Samuel Green, father, grandfather, and the man who had taught them what loyalty truly means.